So there were actual guidebooks, printed guidebooks, that told Victorian British gentlemen exactly which Parisian boulevards to visit after midnight, which cafés had understanding staff, and which hotels wouldn't ask questions about two men sharing a room. The authors didn't advertise them in the Times, obviously, but if you knew where to look in certain London bookshops, particular establishments in Bloomsbury that specialised in French travel literature, you could buy one for a few shillings. Hidden between the covers of books about French architecture or wine-tasting tours were coded directions to an entirely different Paris. A Paris where a man could walk arm in arm with another man, where certain cafés served exclusively male clientele who weren't there for the coffee, where you could be yourself for exactly as long as your holiday lasted. Welcome to the Victorian gay tourist industry. And here's the truly remarkable part. This wasn't some tiny underground secret. Thousands of British men made this journey. Some went once and never returned. Others became regulars, crossing the channel so frequently that French hotel staff knew them by name. They'd spend 50 weeks a year being respectable solicitors and bankers and clergy in London, then disappear to Paris for a fortnight of freedom that must have felt like breathing for the first time. Tonight, you are standing on the deck of the Dover-Calais ferry in September 1892. The white cliffs are disappearing behind you in the grey English drizzle. In your coat pocket is a small leather-bound book with an innocuous title about Parisian monuments. But if you know how to read between the lines, and you've spent weeks learning the code, it contains a map to liberation. Your name is Charles, you're a 32-year-old solicitor from a respectable London family, and you're about to discover why British gentlemen speak of Paris in hushed, reverent tones. The salt spray hits your face as the ferry cuts through the channel waves. Your heart is pounding. You've told your family you're attending a legal conference. Your colleagues think you're visiting art galleries. And in approximately 4 hours, you'll be standing on a gaslit Parisian boulevard, finally able to be the person you've hidden your entire life. This coded guidebook, safely tucked against your ribs, represents something extraordinary. It shows us not just that Victorian gay men existed, we knew that, but that they created an entire infrastructure of freedom, a network of safe spaces, understanding proprietors, and secret knowledge passed from one traveller to the next. As we settle in tonight, we're going to discover the hidden economy that connected London's closets to Paris's boulevards, and why some men considered this cross-channel journey the most important trip they'd ever make. But before we begin this journey together, drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you are watching tonight. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why Victorian Paris became the most important destination for British men who couldn't love freely at home. Let's talk about these remarkable little books because they're fascinating pieces of historical evidence and absolutely hilarious in their desperate attempts at discretion. The most famous was published around 1890 under the title A Guide to the Monuments and Architecture of Paris for the Distinguished Gentleman Traveller. Sounds boring, doesn't it? That was rather the point. The first 30 pages were indeed about monuments, tedious descriptions of Notre Dame and the Arc de Triomphe that would bore anyone to tears. But if you persevered to page 31, the tone shifted subtly. Suddenly there were recommendations for establishments of particular interest to the unmarried gentleman, and cafés favoured by artistic gentlemen of independent means. The addresses were real, the descriptions were coded, and if you knew what you were looking for, you had just purchased a map to gay Paris. These guidebooks were written by men who had made the journey themselves, often British expatriates living in Paris, or French entrepreneurs who'd recognised a business opportunity. They were sold in specific bookshops. We have records of at least 6 in London that specialised in these French travel guides. The shop owners would size you up carefully before mentioning they had some additional Paris resources in the back room. The books cost between 2 and 5 shillings, roughly £50 to £100 in today's money. Not cheap, but worth every penny if you were desperate enough. The coding was elaborate and, in retrospect, not quite as subtle as the authors probably thought. Establishments where gentlemen may find companionship meant gay bars. Hotels sympathetic to confirmed bachelors travelling together meant places that wouldn't bat an eye at 2 men sharing a bed. Promenades favoured by artistic gentlemen after dark meant cruising spots. One guidebook from 1887 recommended a particular stretch of the Boulevard des Italiens, where gentlemen of refined sensibilities often take evening constitutional walks and may encounter like-minded individuals interested in discussing art and literature. They weren't discussing art and literature. The most audacious part was the hotel recommendations. Several Parisian hotels actively marketed themselves to this clientele, discreetly, obviously, but deliberately. The Hôtel de la Paix near the Opera, for instance, was famous among British gay travellers. The concierge staff spoke English. The rooms had double beds that didn't raise eyebrows when occupied by two men, and the establishment maintained a strict policy of minding its own business. We have diary entries from British visitors praising the hotel's understanding atmosphere and lack of intrusive questions. One 1894 diary entry from a London clerk named Thomas describes arriving at the Hôtel de la Paix and feeling, for the first time in his life, that he didn't have to lie. The concierge smiled, handed him the key to the room he'd share with his companion, and wished them un séjour agréable, an enjoyable stay. No judgment, no questions. Thomas wrote that he stood in the hotel lobby and nearly wept. The guidebooks also mapped out the arrondissements, the districts, by their level of discretion. The 9th arrondissement, particularly around Pigalle and Montmartre, was considered relatively safe. The 2nd arrondissement had the most concentrated gay establishments. The 6th arrondissement's Latin Quarter attracted a bohemian artistic crowd, where two men together drew little attention. The guidebooks provided this information like modern travel guides rate neighbourhoods for tourists, except the rating system was, how likely are you to be harassed or arrested for being visibly gay in public? And here's something that really drives home how organised this was. There were update editions. As establishments closed or opened, as hotel management changed hands, new versions of the guidebooks appeared. One bookseller in Bloomsbury kept a subscription list and would notify regular customers when a new edition arrived. Think about that level of infrastructure. This wasn't some spontaneous underground movement. This was a functioning tourist industry with publishers, distributors, retail outlets, and customer service. The French side of this equation is equally fascinating. French hotel owners and café proprietors quickly learned there was money to be made in discretion. Some learned English specifically to communicate with British clients. Others hired bilingual staff. There's a wonderful account from 1895 of a café owner near the Palais Royal who kept a separate menu in English describing his establishment as welcoming to gentlemen seeking companionship in a private atmosphere. The French weren't being particularly progressive here. Napoleon had decriminalised homosexuality back in 1791 as part of the revolutionary legal reforms, not out of enlightened tolerance, but because they simply removed all laws regulating private consensual behaviour between adults. But, whatever the motivation, the practical result was that Paris was legal and London wasn't. British tourists noticed this immediately. One gentleman's diary from 1889 describes his shock at seeing two men walking arm in arm down the Boulevard Saint-Germain in broad daylight, not hidden in shadows, not darting nervous glances around, just walking, together, in daylight. He wrote that he'd never imagined such a thing was possible. In London, that same act would risk arrest, public humiliation, prison, and complete social destruction. In Paris, pedestrians walked past without a second glance. The economic impact was real. We have customs records showing that British mail tourism to Paris increased significantly in the 1880s and 1890s, particularly among unmarried men travelling alone or in pairs. Hotel registration records from several Parisian establishments show British names dramatically overrepresented among guests booking double rooms for two male travellers. One hotel near the Louvre has records showing that in 1893, 40% of their British guests were pairs of unmarried men, compared to only 8% of their French guests fitting that description. The numbers tell a story that Victorian society tried desperately to hide. To understand why these men were so desperate to reach Paris, we need to understand what life was actually like for gay men in Victorian London. And I'm warning you now, it's grim. In 1885, Parliament passed the Criminal Law Amendment Act. Section 11 of that Act, often called the La Bouchère Amendment after the MP who proposed it, made gross indecency between men a crime punishable by up to 2 years of hard labour. What constituted gross indecency? Essentially anything. Any intimate act between men, public or private, could be prosecuted. You didn't need to be caught in the act. Testimony or evidence of intimacy was enough. Oscar Wilde would discover this the hard way a decade later. But here's what really made life impossible. The law didn't just criminalise acts, it criminalised existence. Being suspected was enough to destroy you. If your neighbours thought you were too friendly with your male lodger, they could report you. If a former lover turned spiteful, he could testify against you. The police could raid your home on suspicion alone. And if you were arrested, even if you weren't convicted, your name would appear in the papers. Your life was over regardless. The paranoia this created was suffocating. Middle-class Victorian men lived in constant performance of heterosexual masculinity. You attended church, you expressed interest in marrying, you avoided any behaviour that could be misconstrued. Spending too much time with a particular male friend, suspicious. Living with another unmarried man, dangerous. Having artistic interests or dressing too well, potentially problematic. The entire society was structured to make gay men invisible to the point of non-existence, and if you were caught, the punishment was designed to break you. Hard labour meant exactly that. Breaking rocks, picking oakum, untangling old rope fibres until your fingers bled, walking the treadmill for hours. The prison diet was deliberately inadequate. Other prisoners knew what you were in for and treated you accordingly. Many men emerged from their sentences physically destroyed and mentally shattered. Some never emerged at all. Oscar Wilde's trial in 1895 became the most famous case, but there were thousands of others. We have records of clerks, teachers, shopkeepers, labourers, men from every social class arrested and convicted. The trials were public spectacles. Newspapers printed every lurid detail. Families disowned convicted men, wives divorced them. Children were forbidden from seeing their fathers. Men lost their jobs, their homes, their reputations, everything. So, imagine living under that constant threat. Now imagine discovering there's a place just across the channel where none of that applies, where you can walk down the street holding another man's hand, where you can check into a hotel together without lying, where you can kiss someone goodnight without checking that every curtain is drawn and every door is locked, where you can just exist. That's what Paris represented. Not just freedom, but proof that freedom was possible. That the suffocating, terrifying existence in London wasn't inevitable or natural. It was created by laws and sustained by fear. And for the price of a ferry ticket, you could leave it behind. The class dimension here is important and infuriating. A cross-channel trip cost money. The ferry fare, the hotel, the meals, the entertainment. We're talking about what would be £2,000 or more in today's money for a week's holiday. Middle-class professionals could afford this. Wealthy gentlemen could afford it easily and went frequently. But working-class gay men? They were stuck. They faced the same laws, the same dangers, the same persecution, but without any escape route. The same year that wealthy British tourists were sipping wine in Parisian cafés with their companions, working-class men in London were being sentenced to hard labour for the exact same expressions of affection. There's a heartbreaking account from 1891 of a young factory worker named William who was arrested in London for gross indecency with another man. During his trial, his employer testified that William had asked for time off earlier that year to visit Paris. William had been saving for 2 years to afford the trip. He never made it. He was sentenced to 18 months of hard labour and died in prison 6 months later of pneumonia. His wealthy contemporaries were making the same Paris trip 3 or 4 times a year. The psychological toll of living this double life was immense. We have diaries and letters from men describing the constant anxiety, the exhaustion of maintaining the facade, the loneliness of never being fully honest with anyone. One gentleman wrote in 1888 about attending a dinner party in London where other guests discussed the moral degeneracy of men like him, and he had to nod along, agree with their condemnations and laugh at their jokes. Then he excused himself, went home and cried for an hour. 3 weeks later, he was on a ferry to Paris. Victorian London was a city of rigid social codes, religious judgment, legal persecution and absolute intolerance. Men were expected to marry, produce heirs, attend church, maintain respectability, and never, ever deviate from the prescribed path. For gay men, this meant choosing between a life of complete dishonesty or complete destruction. Many chose dishonest marriages, producing families while desperately hiding their true selves. Others chose isolation, remaining bachelors and enduring suspicious whispers. And some, the lucky ones with enough money, discovered there was a third option. It was temporary, it was expensive, and it required leaving the country. But for a few precious days, it was real. And speaking of bedtime, we've turned this story into a PDF storybook that you can download for absolutely nothing. It's got the full tale, all the eye-catching images, and the historical sources for when someone inevitably goes, "That can't possibly be true." See the comments for details. Your ferry docks in Calais in the afternoon. The French customs officer barely glances at your passport, stamps it with a perfunctory thump, and waves you through. You board the train to Paris, settling into a second-class compartment that smells of tobacco and old leather. The French countryside rolls past your window, fields, villages, church spires. Your hands are shaking slightly. You're not sure if it's excitement or terror. The train arrives at Gare du Nord as evening falls. Paris announces itself immediately. The noise, the crowds, the rapid-fire French being shouted across platforms, the smell of bread and coffee and coal smoke. You find a cab, hand the driver a slip of paper with your hotel's address, and try not to look as nervous as you feel. Your schoolboy French is rusty, but the driver seems to understand. He nods, loads your small trunk, and you're off, rattling through gaslit streets toward the second arrondissement. Paris in the 1890s was a city transformed by Baron Haussmann's massive renovations. Wide boulevards, grand buildings, modern sewers, gaslighting everywhere. It felt like the future compared to London's medieval tangles. But for you, the most important transformation was one you couldn't see yet. The culture of relative tolerance that made this journey possible. Your hotel is exactly where the guidebook promised it would be, tucked on a quiet street near the opera. The building is elegant without being ostentatious, with flower boxes in the windows and a discreet brass plaque by the door. You take a breath and walk inside. The lobby is small but comfortable. Dark wood paneling, red carpet, gaslight fixtures casting warm light. Behind the desk is a middle-aged Frenchman with an impressive moustache who looks up as you enter. You provide your name, stumbling through your prepared French phrases. He responds in accented but perfect English. "Ah, yes, Monsieur Charles. We have been expecting you. A double room on the third floor, very quiet, overlooking the courtyard. Your companion has not yet arrived?" You freeze. Your companion? You're travelling alone. Is this a test? A trap? Then you remember the guidebook's advice. Many hotels assume you'll be meeting someone, even if you arrive alone. It's their way of signalling they understand, without saying anything explicit. You manage to say that yes, your companion may be joining you later in the week. The concierge smiles warmly, hands you the key, and says that Monsieur's privacy will of course be completely respected. You nearly collapse with relief right there in the lobby. The room is perfect. Clean, comfortable, with a large bed, a writing desk, and windows that open onto the courtyard where you can hear a fountain splashing. You sit on the bed and just breathe for a moment. You're here. You're actually here, in a hotel where the staff knows exactly why you've come and doesn't care, where you don't have to lie or perform or hide, where you can just exist. After composing yourself, you consult the guidebook again. There's a café mentioned, just a few streets away, that's described as welcoming to artistic gentlemen, one of the coded phrases. The guidebook recommends visiting around 9 in the evening, after dinner, but before the theatre crowds disperse. You check your pocket watch. Perfect timing. The walk through Parisian streets is surreal. Everything looks different through the lens of possibility. In London, you'd be scanning every face for recognition, worried about being seen anywhere remotely suspicious. Here, you're just another tourist. The anonymity is intoxicating. Nobody knows you. Nobody cares. You could be anyone. The café is small, on a corner with large windows and tables spilling onto the pavement. Inside, it's crowded and warm. smelling of wine and cigarettes and coffee. The clientele is entirely male, which you notice immediately. They're dressed well, talking in low voices, and several turn to glance at you as you enter. Not threateningly, curiously. You take a table near the window, order wine in halting French, and try to look like you belong. What strikes you first is the ease, the way men touch each other casually, a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing while sharing a newspaper, two men leaning close to whisper something private. Nothing overtly sexual, but an intimacy that would cause a scandal in any London establishment. Here, it's unremarkable. The cafe owner moves among the tables, refilling glasses and chatting, utterly unbothered by the atmosphere he's created. A gentleman at the next table catches your eye and smiles. He's about your age, well-dressed, with kind eyes. In English accented with French, he asks if you've just arrived. You nod, still not quite able to form words. He laughs gently and says he remembers his first night in Paris too. Then he asks if you'd like to join his table. There are 3 others there, all English, all making their own versions of this journey. You accept gratefully. The conversation flows easily after the initial awkwardness. They ask where you're from, how long you're staying, whether this is your first visit. They share recommendations, restaurants, theatres, walks, other cafes. They speak openly about things you've never heard discussed aloud. One man mentions his companion back in London who couldn't make this trip. Another talks about falling in love with a French artist and considering moving to Paris permanently. A third describes the relief of having a place where he can be honest, even if it's temporary. You sit there sipping wine, listening to these men talk freely about their lives, and something inside you cracks open. You've spent your entire adult life believing you were alone, unique in your affliction, isolated by your secret, fundamentally broken in a way that separated you from all normal humanity. And here are 4 other British men, in a cafe full of dozens more, all carrying the same secret, all making the same desperate journey toward a few days of honesty. One of them notices your expression and asks if you're all right. You realize you're crying. You apologize, embarrassed, but they wave it off. They understand. Everyone cries on their first night in Paris. The relief is overwhelming. Later, much later, you walk back to your hotel through streets alive with music and laughter. Paris at midnight is magical. Couples walking together, cafes still bustling, street musicians playing on corners. You pass 2 men walking arm in arm, talking intimately. In London, this would be unthinkable, dangerous, illegal. Here, nobody even glances at them. You think about the guidebook in your pocket, the cafe full of men like you, the hotel staffs knowing discretion, and you understand something profound. The world you've been told was natural and inevitable, the hiding, the fear, the crushing loneliness, is actually just England. Freedom is possible. You're living it right now. Over the next week, you discover that gay Paris isn't just one neighbourhood or one cafe. It's an entire hidden geography overlaid on the official city. The guidebook maps it out, but the real education comes from the men you meet who've been coming here for years. The Boulevard des Italiens becomes your favourite evening promenade. During the day, it's an ordinary Parisian boulevard. Shops, cafes, theatres, crowds of respectable tourists. After 11 at night, the character changes subtly. More single men walking slowly, making eye contact, pausing at particular corners. The cafes along this stretch have outdoor seating where men sit for hours watching the passing traffic of humanity. It's all quite discreet. Victorian discretion didn't disappear just because you crossed the channel. But the difference from London is night and day. Here, you can look, you can smile. You can approach someone and start a conversation without risking arrest. The Passage des Panoramas, a covered shopping arcade built in 1800, becomes a revelation. During daylight hours, it's full of shoppers and tourists admiring the glass roof and elegant storefronts. But the guidebook mentions it's of interest for evening strolls, and when you visit at night, you understand why. The arcade stays lit but quieter, and it becomes a meeting place. Men walk through slowly, browsing shop windows they're not really interested in, pausing in alcoves for whispered conversations. There's a cafe at one end where men arrange to meet. The whole place functions as a Victorian gay cruising spot, protected from weather and police attention, lit and respectable enough to avoid suspicion. Certain theatres have reputations too. The opera, obviously, attracts a wealthy gay clientele that appreciates elaborate productions and beautiful male dancers. But smaller theatres in the Marais district have entire sections where gay men congregate. The performances are often spectacular, can-can dancers, acrobats, singers. But the real entertainment is social. Men arrive in groups, sit together in upper galleries, and use the intermissions to circulate and socialise. One British visitor's diary describes attending a theatre performance and being far more interested in the handsome French gentleman in the next box than in anything happening on stage. By intermission, they'd been introduced. By the end of the evening, they'd made plans to meet for dinner. The Bathhouses are perhaps the most astonishing discovery. Victorian London had Turkish baths, but they were scrupulously supervised, and any hint of impropriety resulted in immediate expulsion and potential prosecution. Paris had Les Bains de Montmartre, Les Bains d'Apollon, and several others that functioned as semi-open gay establishments. You paid your entrance fee, received a towel and locker key, and entered a world of steam and marble and relaxed social rules. Men socialised openly, made introductions, arranged future meetings. The staff maintained order, but didn't police behaviour beyond preventing actual disturbances. One British visitor wrote in 1890 that visiting a Parisian bathhouse was the first time he'd been naked around other men without feeling terror. The Jardin du Luxembourg served as a daytime cruising spot. The park was huge, beautiful, full of fountains and sculptures and winding paths. Certain sections, particularly the less travelled paths on the western side, became known meeting places. Men would walk slowly, reading newspapers on benches, feeding birds by the pond, and making subtle eye contact. It was all quite innocent looking to any casual observer, but if you knew what to watch for, entire romantic negotiations unfolded in glances and gestures. What's remarkable is how organised this all was. Specific cafés on specific streets, particular park benches, certain theatre sections, known bathhouse nights. This wasn't random or spontaneous. This was an established geography passed down through those precious guidebooks and by word of mouth between travellers. British men arriving for their first visit would be taken under the wing of more experienced travellers who'd show them the ropes. There was a genuine community here, temporary and transient, but real. The French attitude helped enormously. While French society wasn't exactly progressive by modern standards, the legal situation was fundamentally different. Since Napoleon's code removed laws against private consensual behaviour, police didn't raid private parties or arrest men for being in gay establishments. You could still face social disapproval, religious condemnation, family rejection. Homophobia didn't disappear just because it wasn't criminalised, but you wouldn't go to prison. The threat of legal destruction that haunted every moment in London simply didn't exist in Paris. French café and hotel owners quickly realised there was money in catering to this British tourist trade. Some establishments actively cultivated reputations as gay-friendly. They'd train staff to be discreet, learn key English phrases, and provide the kind of knowing service that put nervous British tourists at ease. One hotel near the Louvre allegedly had a concierge who'd greet British couples checking in by saying, "No questions, no problems," in English, then handling everything smoothly. Another cafe owner in Montmartre kept a private back room where British gentlemen could gather without the scrutiny of the main cafe floor. The economic incentive created a virtuous cycle. As more British gay tourists arrived, more French establishments catered to them, which attracted more tourists, which created more establishments. By the 1890s, you could spend an entire fortnight in Paris moving through an almost completely gay social world. Cafes for breakfast, parks for afternoon promenades, bathhouses for relaxation, theatres for evenings, clubs for late nights. You'd interact with straight Paris when buying train tickets or visiting museums, but your actual social life could exist entirely within this parallel geography. Some British men became such regular visitors that they maintained semi-permanent arrangements. They'd book the same hotel room for 2 weeks every year, becoming friendly with staff who'd greet them by name. They'd establish friendships with Parisian locals and other regular British visitors, creating an annual reunion tradition. Their Paris lives became as real as their London lives, sometimes more real because they could be honest there. The geography wasn't just physical, it was temporal too. Different times of day meant different opportunities and different risks. Dawn on the Boulevard Saint-Germain was for chance encounters with strangers walking home from night-long adventures. Afternoon in the Luxembourg Gardens was for leisurely promenades and subtle cruising. Evening at established cafés was for socializing and making plans. Midnight at certain clubs was for dancing and drinking and openly being gay in ways that would be unimaginable anywhere in England. One British visitor wrote in his diary about spending an entire day moving through this geography. Morning coffee at a gay-friendly café near his hotel, afternoon walk through the Luxembourg Gardens where he struck up a conversation with a handsome French student, early evening at the Bathhouse, dinner at a restaurant known for its gay clientele, theatre in the Marais district, late-night drinks at a club in Montmartre, and finally a moonlit walk along the Seine with a companion he'd met at the theatre. An entire day of freedom, socializing, romance and honesty. He wrote that he felt more alive in that single day than in the previous year in London combined. But here's where the story gets complicated, because this freedom was built on foundations of privilege, secrecy, and impermanence that created their own forms of suffering. First, the privilege issue. We've mentioned this, but it bears repeating and expanding. The entire Victorian gay Paris tourism industry was accessible only to men with disposable income. A cross-channel trip wasn't exorbitant by middle-class standards, but it was far beyond working-class means. The factory workers, labourers, servants and shopkeepers who made up the majority of Victorian gay men couldn't afford this escape route. They faced the same persecution, the same laws, the same dangers as wealthy men, but without any relief valve. The class divide created bitter resentments. We have records of working-class gay men in London who knew that wealthier men were escaping to Paris while they remained trapped. One East End labourer wrote in 1893 about watching wealthy gentlemen board trains at Charing Cross Station, knowing they were headed to Paris, knowing they'd return in 2 weeks with stories of freedom, while he'd never earn enough to make that journey. He was arrested later that year for gross indecency and sentenced to 18 months of hard labour. His wealthy counterparts were sipping champagne in Parisian cafés that same month. The temporary nature of this freedom created its own psychological torture. You'd spend 50 weeks living in fear in London, maintaining your facade, suffocating under respectability, and then you'd have 2 weeks in Paris where you could breathe. The contrast was overwhelming. Many men described the return journey as agony, watching the French coastline disappear, seeing Dover's white cliffs approach, feeling the weight of their London personas settling back onto their shoulders like iron chains. Several diaries describe men crying on the return ferry, or spending the entire Channel crossing in their cabins, unable to face the symbolic transition. And then you'd arrive back in London and resume the lie. Back to your respectable lodgings, your respectable job, your carefully maintained respectability. You'd attend church on Sunday and listen to sermons condemning men like you. You'd make small talk with colleagues about the possibility of marriage. You'd visit your family and endure questions about why you're still a bachelor. And the whole time, you'd be remembering Paris, the café where men laughed together freely, the boulevard where you'd walked with someone's hand in yours, the hotel room where you'd woken up next to another man without fear. The memory of freedom made the cage more unbearable. Some men couldn't handle the transition and broke completely. There are several documented cases of British men who visited Paris, experienced that freedom, returned to London, and had psychological breakdowns within months. The contrast between what was possible and what their lives actually contained became intolerable. Others dealt with it by planning their next trip immediately, living entirely for those 2 weeks a year when they could be honest. Their entire London existence became just the waiting period between Paris visits. The secrecy created isolation even within the community. You couldn't talk about your Paris experiences in London, not really. If you'd made friends among the British gay tourists in Paris, you might not ever see them again. You didn't know their real names or how to contact them safely. The friendships and romances that bloomed in Paris had no way to continue in England. You'd meet someone, spend a magical week together, and then return to your separate closets with no way to communicate. The pain of those partings must have been excruciating. There's a heartbreaking collection of letters in French archives from British men who fell in love with Parisian locals and tried to maintain long-distance relationships. The logistics were nearly impossible. Letters had to be sent to discreet addresses where they wouldn't be intercepted by suspicious landladies or family members. Visits required elaborate cover stories. One British clerk maintained a 3-year relationship with a French artist through quarterly visits, telling his employer he was learning French for business purposes. When he was finally exposed through an intercepted letter, he lost his job, his lodgings, and any chance of seeing his lover again. The last letter in the collection is from the French artist, returned unopened with "addressee unknown" stamped across it. The French experience highlighted the artificiality of British oppression in ways that made it harder to bear. In London, you could sometimes convince yourself that the hiding was necessary, natural, inevitable. But Paris proved it wasn't. The same behaviours that would destroy you in England were unremarkable in France. The same expressions of affection that meant prison in London meant nothing in Paris. The laws creating your suffering were choices, not natural facts. This realization was simultaneously liberating and enraging. Some men chose to stay in Paris permanently, rather than return to England. We have records of British expatriates who made this leap, finding work teaching English or in British businesses operating in France. The choice meant cutting ties with family, abandoning careers, and accepting permanent exile. But, for some, honesty was worth it. One 1891 letter from a British expatriate in Paris to his brother in London describes his choice. "You ask why I won't return home. Brother, I have found a home here that England never provided. I can love honestly here. Yes, I've lost much. Family approval, career prospects, the comfort of my native country. But I've gained myself. I will not trade that for anything." Others tried to import Parisian attitudes back to England with predictably disastrous results. Emboldened by their Paris experiences, some men became less cautious in London. They'd push boundaries slightly, be fractionally more open, take small risks they'd never have taken before, and they got caught. There are several documented cases of men arrested shortly after returning from Paris trips, as if the confidence and freedom they'd experienced made them careless. The punishment was the same as it had always been, but the psychological contrast made it crueler. The guidebooks themselves represented this bittersweet contradiction. They were simultaneously lifelines to freedom and evidence of oppression. The fact that they needed to exist, that you needed coded instructions to find places where you could be yourself, was its own indictment of British society. The elaborate secrecy required to purchase, transport, and use these guidebooks, keeping them hidden from landladies, disguising them as ordinary travel books, destroying them before customs inspections on the return journey, was exhausting. Freedom shouldn't require this much subterfuge. And yet, for all the limitations and pain, the Paris trips mattered enormously. For many men, those brief periods of honesty were what kept them alive. The knowledge that freedom existed somewhere, that they could touch it even if only temporarily, gave them reason to endure the suffocating rest of the year. Several suicide notes from Victorian gay men explicitly mention that their only happy moments were in Paris. The temporary freedom, inadequate and incomplete as it was sometimes the only thing preventing complete despair. Your week in Paris ends too quickly. The night before your departure, you walk the Boulevard des Italiens one last time, trying to memorize everything. The gas lamps, the cafés, the faces of men who smiled at you without fear. You return to your hotel and pack slowly, each item going into your trunk feeling like sealing away a piece of yourself. The concierge bids you farewell the next morning with genuine warmth. He hopes Monsieur enjoyed his stay and will return soon. You thank him in your improving French and mean it with every fibre of your being. You will return. This isn't goodbye. It's just until next time. The train to Calais feels longer than the journey arriving. The French countryside passes by your window, but you're not seeing it. You're already mourning. The ferry crossing is grey and choppy, matching your mood. When Dover's cliffs appear, you feel physically sick. By the time you're on the London train, you've reconstructed your public persona completely. The carefully neutral expression, the respectability, the lie. It fits like a familiar coat you've always hated wearing. You return to your London lodgings. Your landlady asks about your trip, and you provide the prepared stories about art galleries and historical sites. You return to work Monday morning. Your colleagues ask about Paris, and you mention the Louvre and Notre Dame and excellent French wine. Nobody asks about the café where you held hands with another man. Nobody asks about the boulevard where you walked freely. Nobody asks about the person you actually are. But something has changed. You know now that your London existence isn't inevitable. You've seen the alternative. You've lived it, even if only for a week. And you've bought next year's guidebook, already planning your return. The Victorian gay Paris tourism industry continued until World War I disrupted everything. The war made channel crossings dangerous, brought military supervision to French ports, and generally destroyed the ease and anonymity that made the system work. After the war, the world had changed. London was slowly, grudgingly becoming marginally less oppressive. Not safe, but less aggressively dangerous. Paris remained freer, but the specific guidebook and hotel network infrastructure faded as new systems emerged. The guidebooks themselves largely disappeared. Most were destroyed by their owners. Having such evidence was simply too dangerous to keep. A few survived in private collections and archives, discovered decades later by historians who recognized what they were looking at. These small, leather-bound books with their innocent titles and coded contents are now prized historical artifacts, testament to an underground infrastructure that helped thousands of men find temporary freedom. The hotels changed hands, the cafés closed or transformed, the geography shifted. Modern Paris has its own gay neighborhoods and establishments, operating openly in ways Victorian tourists could never have imagined. The Marais district today has rainbow flags flying openly, bars with names that leave no room for misinterpretation, couples walking hand in hand in broad daylight without anyone batting an eye. The hidden geography of Victorian gay Paris has been replaced by an open one, but the emotional reality, the desperate need for spaces where you can be honest, the relief of finding community, the pain of returning to places where you must hide, that hasn't changed for many gay people worldwide. There are still countries where being gay is illegal, still societies where coming out means losing everything, still people who make desperate journeys toward temporary freedom because it's all they can access. The Victorian British gentlemen making their furtive trips to Paris weren't uniquely oppressed. They were experiencing what countless gay people have experienced before and since. The specific details change, the laws, the destinations, the guidebooks, but the fundamental human need for places where you can be yourself remains constant. They weren't victims of some peculiar Victorian cruelty. They were victims of the same homophobia that exists in different forms around the world today. What's remarkable is their resilience. They could have surrendered to despair. Many did. Victorian records show elevated suicide rates among unmarried men, though the connection wasn't officially acknowledged. But thousands of others found ways to survive. They bought the guidebooks, made the journeys, built the networks, and created moments of freedom within systems designed to crush them. That took extraordinary courage. The men who wrote the guidebooks, who ran the bookshops, who operated the understanding hotels, who created the safe cafés, they were heroes of their moment, even if history barely remembers them. They saw a need and filled it, risking their own safety to provide roadmaps to freedom for strangers. The French entrepreneurs who learned English to serve British gay tourists, who maintained discretion when they could have exploited or exposed their vulnerable clients, who built businesses on radical hospitality, they deserve recognition too. And the men who made the journey, who scraped together the money, who invented the cover stories, who bought the guidebooks and crossed the channel toward hope, they were brave, braver than they probably knew. They refused to accept that their closeted London existence was all that life could offer. They sought something better, even if only temporarily, even if it meant returning to suffering afterward. The fact that they tried at all is remarkable. Today, if you walk the Boulevard des Italiens at midnight, you won't see nervous British tourists consulting coded guidebooks. But you might see a young person from a country where being gay is still illegal, visiting Paris for the first time, experiencing that same overwhelming relief of being in a place where they don't have to hide. The specific oppression changes, but the human need for freedom doesn't. Paris no longer has a monopoly on that freedom. Many cities worldwide have become safe havens, but the city still carries echoes of those Victorian journeys toward honesty. The guidebooks are gone, the hotels have changed, The men who made those desperate journeys are all dead now, their stories mostly forgotten. But what they represented, the refusal to accept oppression as inevitable, the courage to seek freedom even when it's temporary, the resilience to keep living when the world says you shouldn't exist, that legacy continues in every gay person who refuses to hide, in every community that creates safe spaces, in every small act of visibility in hostile environments. Your week in Paris ends, but the knowledge of what's possible remains. You board the train back to London carrying that knowledge like contraband, hidden but precious. And you plan your return, because now you know, freedom exists, you've touched it. And having touched it once, you can never quite forget what it feels like. As our journey through Victorian Paris's secret boulevards concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry, woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is The Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But for now, stay tuned, as we have a bonus story coming right up, read especially for you by our guest narrator.
Thank you for having me here. What a wonderful channel. Our next story is The Roman Legion That Vanished, solving history's greatest disappearance. Hope you like it. There's a story you've probably heard, a tale so good it's practically tattooed on the back of popular history. It involves the mighty Roman Ninth Legion, the Legio IX Hispana, a crack unit of Rome's finest, marching north into the swirling, unforgiving mists of Scotland, sometime around 117 AD. They march with their eagle standard held high, a gleaming symbol of imperial power, ready to civilize the wild north with sharp steel and disciplined formations. And then, nothing. They vanish, swallowed whole by the Caledonian wilderness, wiped out to the last man by ferocious blue-painted tribesmen in a single glorious cinematic last stand. It's the ultimate story of imperial hubris meeting barbarian fury, a perfect tragic little package. It's a story that has everything: heroism, mystery, fog machines, and probably a dramatic score by Hans Zimmer. It's a fantastic story, a kind of story that sells novels and gets movie adaptations made. It's clean, it's epic, and it feels deeply, profoundly right. It confirms everything we think we know about the untamable spirit of the North and the eventual limits of even Rome's power. There's just one small, inconvenient, and frankly rather annoying problem with this perfect story. It's almost certainly not what happened. The truth, as it so often is, was far messier and much less cinematic. Tonight, you are not a hero in that final doomed charge. You are Gaius Petilius, a legionary, a grunt in the third cohort of the Ninth. It's 117 AD, and you are stationed at the legionary fortress of Ebricum, the place you English speakers will one day call York. Your primary concern for the past 6 months has not been a glorious battle, but a persistent leak in the roof of your barrack block, and the undeniable fact that the camp cook, a man from Gaul named Ludo, seems to believe that garlic is a structural component of every meal. You are a soldier of the most famous missing legion in history, and you didn't vanish in a blaze of glory. You just got transferred. The proof? The receipts, as it were, didn't come from a fog-shrouded glen in the Highlands. They came from a construction site in the Netherlands, centuries later. Archaeologists in the city of Nijmegen, a place you would have known as Novi Amigus, found tiles. Boring, humble, terracotta roof tiles, stamped with the insignia of the Ninth Legion. These tiles date to a time after you were all supposed to be heroic ghosts in Scotland. It's the historical equivalent of a missing person, long presumed dead, suddenly having their easy pass tag ping a toll booth in a different country. This discovery, along with other scattered inscriptions, didn't just add a new chapter to the story of the Ninth. It forced historians to tear out the old pages and admit that the dramatic disappearance was a myth. The legion's end wasn't a sudden cataclysm. It was a slow, quiet, bureaucratic fading away. This discovery, made in pieces throughout the 20th century in places like Nijmegen, reveals something extraordinary about the sprawling, messy reality of the Roman Empire. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived on the edge of the known world. We'll explore the life of a soldier whose greatest enemy wasn't a screaming barbarian, but boredom, damp, and paperwork. Now dim the lights, and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about lost legions and the quiet truths buried under our feet. Your world, for now, is Ebercombe. You've been here for 3 years, and you've decided that Britain has 2 seasons. The rainy season, and the season where it's about to rain. The fortress is a marvel of engineering. A miniature Rome of timber, stone, and tile dropped into the middle of northern England. It smells perpetually of wood smoke, wet wool, and the communal latrines, a scent you've come to associate with home. Your life is governed by the sound of the trumpet, the call to wake, the call to muster, the call to eat, the call to sleep. It's a life of profound, mind-numbing routine, which is precisely the point. An army runs on predictability, not passion. You are part of a contubernium, an 8-man squad who share a 2-room space in the long barrack block. It's your family, your support group, and your primary source of irritation. There's Marcus, who snores with a sound like a donkey being strangled. Lucius, a wiry kid from Spain who is far too cheerful in the morning. And Decimus, an older veteran who has a story for everything, most of which involve him being much cleverer than his centurion, and none of which are probably true. You sleep on a simple straw-stuffed mattress, your gear meticulously stored nearby. Your worldly possessions fit in a small wooden chest. A spare tunic, some hobnailed sandals, caligae in desperate need of repair, a lucky knucklebone from a game you won 2 years ago, and a few letters from your sister in Gaul, their ink now faded and blurred. A typical day begins before dawn. You stumble out into the pre-dawn chill, the air so cold it feels like a physical slap. You pull on your tunic, your leather vest, and your military belt, the cingulum, its metal plates making a familiar jangling sound. Breakfast is a hunk of coarse bread, bucellatum, and some water, or if you're lucky, a bit of sour wine. It's not meant to be enjoyed. It's fuel. Then it's off to the parade ground for drill. Hours of it, marching, turning, forming shield walls. You practice with your weapons until your arms ache. Your shield, the curved, rectangular scutum, feels like an extension of your left arm. Your short sword, the gladius, is a familiar weight in your right hand. You practice throwing the pilum, the heavy javelin designed to bend on impact so the enemy can't throw it back. It's a brilliant piece of engineering, a one-shot, non-reusable party popper of doom, and you spend hours learning to hurl it with just the right amount of force to pierce a shield and the man hiding behind it. The drill is relentless, designed to turn 8 individuals into a single unthinking leather and iron killing machine. Your centurion, a man named Longinus, with a face like a clenched fist and a voice like gravel in a bucket, stalks the lines, his staff of vine wood a constant threat. He doesn't shout to inspire you. He shouts to grind any trace of individuality out of you. You are not Gaius. You are a component, a cog, and cogs must be interchangeable. But life isn't all drill. There's work, endless, back-breaking work. Ebercombe is a fortress, but it's also a city in constant need of maintenance. You dig ditches. You repair walls. You quarry stone. You work in the bathhouse, stoking the fires for the hypocaust heating system. You stand guard duty on the ramparts, staring out at the rolling green hills and the persistent gray sky, fighting off boredom and the insidious damp that seems to seep into your very bones. It's here, on guard duty, that you have time to think. You think about your 25-year term of service. You've done 8, only 17 more to go. A lifetime. You think about the small plot of land you're promised upon retirement. A little piece of the world to call your own. That's the dream that keeps you going. Not glory, not the favor of the emperor. Just a farm, some goats, and a roof that doesn't leak. The local tribe, the Brigantes, are notionally allies, subdued, Romanized, but you know better. You see it in the eyes of the merchants who come to the fort to trade. A flicker of resentment, a watchfulness. There are still pockets of resistance out there in the hills, groups of warriors who refuse to bend the knee to Rome. Every now and then, a patrol doesn't come back, or comes back with fewer men than it left with. The official report always talks of accidents or desertion, but you and the other men know the pacified north is a sleeping wolf. Best not to poke it. Your social life revolves around the camp. In the evenings, you might gamble with knucklebones, sharing a jug of watered-down wine with your tent mates. You tell stories, complain about the food, the weather, the officers. It's a universal language spoken by soldiers throughout history. The bathhouse is the social hub, a place to steam the ache from your muscles, scrape the grime from your skin with a strigil, and catch up on the latest gossip. Who's been promoted? Who is in trouble with the centurion? Is it true the shipment of wine from Gaul was lost at sea? These are the things that matter. The grand strategy of the empire, the political maneuvering in Rome, that's all just noise from a world away. Your world is this fort, these men, this routine. And then, one day, the routine breaks. A messenger arrives from Londinium, his horse lathered and exhausted. The scroll he carries bears the seal of the provincial governor. Rumors fly through the barracks like wildfire. There's trouble up north. Beyond the frontier, the tribes in Caledonia are uniting. They've been raiding across the border, testing the defenses. The new emperor, Hadrian, is still settling into his role, and a show of strength is needed. The 9th has been chosen. You feel a knot tighten in your stomach. It's a strange mix of fear and excitement. This is it. This is what all the training has been for. For years, you've been a glorified construction worker in a military uniform. Now, you're going to be a soldier. You packed your gear, your armor, your helmet, your marching pack containing your rations, a cooking pot, a cloak, and your entrenching tools. The pack, you joke grimly, is designed by someone who hates legionaries and wants them to suffer. It weighs a good 80 pounds, and you're expected to march 20 miles a day with it on your back. As the entire legion, nearly 5,000 men, assembles on the parade ground, the legate gives a speech. It's the usual stuff. Glory of Rome, duty, honor, barbarians who need to be taught a lesson. You listen, but you're mostly focused on the practical. Are your sandal straps tight enough? Is your helmet adjusted properly? Did you remember to pack the small whetstone for your gladius? The speech ends. A great roar goes up from the assembled men, and the eagle standard of the 9th is lifted high. It's a magnificent thing, a golden eagle with its wings outstretched, perched atop a pole adorned with military honors. It's the soul of the legion. Where it goes, you go. And where it goes, Rome goes. The gates of Ebracum swing open, and you march out in a long, snaking column of red tunics and gleaming iron. You march north, into the wild, into the mist, and into the story that will one day make you famous for all the wrong reasons. The march itself is a brutal, monotonous affair. It's not a glorious parade. It's a logistical nightmare. You are a single cell in a massive organism, a river of men and mules and wagons flowing across the landscape. The road, a testament to Roman engineering, is a straight, hard line cutting through the wilderness. But even the best road can't change the terrain. Hills that look gentle from a distance become grueling climbs. Rivers that seem placid become treacherous waist-deep crossings in freezing water. The further north you go, the more the land changes. The rolling green hills of the Brigantes give way to a harsher, more foreboding landscape. The trees are stunted and twisted by the wind. The ground underfoot becomes boggy, and the air grows thick with a persistent, chilling mist that clings to your woolen cloak and seeps into your bones. The sun becomes a pale, watery disk in a permanently gray sky. You are marching off the edge of the map into a place that feels ancient and hostile to your very presence. The locals here, the Caledonians, are not like the semi-Romanized tribes further south. You don't see them, but you feel their presence. A flicker of movement in the trees. A watchfire on a distant hill at night. They are ghosts in their own land, and you are the noisy, clumsy intruders. Your centurion, Longinus, is even more on edge than usual. "Keep your eyes open and your mouth shut," he growls, his vine staff smacking against his leather-armored thigh. This isn't a stroll through the forum. Everything here wants you dead. The people, the land, even the damn weather. He's not wrong. The greatest enemy so far isn't the Caledonians. It's the environment. Men slip on mossy rocks and break ankles. Carts get stuck in the mud, their wheels sinking to the axles. The rain is constant, a miserable, soul-sapping drizzle that never ends. Your leather gear is perpetually damp and smells of mildew. At night, you don't build the standard marching camp. You build a fortress. A deep ditch is dug, a high turf wall is raised, and sharp stakes are driven into the ground. Every man works until his hands are raw and his back aches. Security is paramount. Sleep comes in short, exhausted bursts, punctuated by the cry of the sentries and the howling of the wind. Weeks turn into a month. You are deep in Caledonia now. The campaign is not what you expected. There are no pitched battles, no glorious charges against a barbarian horde. The enemy is too smart for that. They refuse to meet you on open ground, where your discipline and heavy infantry would crush them. Instead, they fight a ghost's war. They attack your supply lines, picking off foragers and stragglers. They set ambushes on narrow forest tracks. They appear out of the mist, hurl a volley of javelins, and vanish back into the bog before your cohort can even form a proper line. It's a war of nerves, a slow, grinding attrition that wears you down more than any single battle could. You lose men not in heroic hundreds, but in trickles of twos and threes. A patrol is ambushed. A sentry is found at his post in the morning with a knife in his back. Morale begins to fray at Thieges. The men grow quiet, their eyes constantly scanning the oppressive, silent landscape. The cheerful banter around the campfire is replaced by a tense, weary silence. Decimus, the old veteran in your tent, stops telling his tall tales. Even he has never seen a war like this. "It's like fighting the fog," he mutters one night, staring into the embers of the fire. "You can't stab fog." The goal of the campaign seems to be to intimidate the tribes, to push north and build a new series of forts, a new line to hold back the tide. You spend more time with a shovel in your hand than a sword. You clear forests, quarry stone, and build walls, creating little islands of Roman order in a sea of Caledonian wilderness. It's grueling work. The Caledonians watch you, harass you, make you pay for every foot of ground you take. One afternoon, while on a wood-cutting detail, your group is attacked. It happens in an instant. A volley of stones from slingshots whistles out of the trees, followed by a terrifying war cry. A man next to you goes down with a sickening thud, a stone having shattered his helmet and the skull beneath. You react instantly, your training taking over. "Form shield wall," Longinus roars. You slam your scutum into the shield of the man next to you, creating an impenetrable barrier of wood and iron. The Caledonians, seeing the line form, don't press their attack. They melt back into the woods. It's over in seconds. You are left with one man dead, another with a nasty gash on his arm, and the hammering of your own heart in your ears. You never even got a clear look at them. Just fleeting shapes, animal hides, and the glint of iron. This isn't war as you understood it. This is pest control, and you are the ones being exterminated. The campaign drags on through a miserable summer and into a cold, wet autumn. The Legion has taken casualties, but you are far from destroyed. You are, however, exhausted, worn thin, a tool that has been blunted by overuse. The supply lines are stretched to their breaking point. The men are tired, sick, and demoralized. The 9th Legion, the proud Hispana, has been bled white not by a climactic battle, but by 1,000 small cuts. A decision is made, high up the chain of command. The push north is to be abandoned. The cost is too high, the gains too small. The new frontier will be established further south. A great wall will be built, a permanent barrier to seal off the troublesome north. Hadrian's Wall, the order comes down. You are to withdraw. It feels less like a strategic redeployment and more like a retreat. You methodically dismantle the forts you spent months building, pulling back south, ceding the territory you fought so hard to take. The Caledonians shadow you the whole way, a constant, unseen threat at your backs. But what you don't know, what none of the common soldiers know, is that the strategic situation for the whole empire is changing. The era of endless expansion under the previous emperor, Trajan, is over. Hadrian is a pragmatist, a consolidator. He is shoring up the borders, trimming the fat, and reallocating resources where they are most needed. And an understrength, exhausted legion on the dampest, most miserable frontier of the empire is a resource that could be better used elsewhere. You eventually make it back to relative safety south of the future wall. There is no victory parade, just the quiet relief of being out of that cursed land. But the rumors start again. This time, they are not about war, but about transfers. The 9th is being moved, not just to a different fort in Britain, but off the island entirely. The German frontier, along the Rhine, is a flashpoint. The tribes there are numerous, well-organized, and a constant threat. Reinforcements are needed. Your legion, with its centuries of experience in brutal frontier warfare, is the logical choice. The confirmation comes, and it's met with mixed feelings. On the one hand, you will be leaving Britain. You will never again have to endure another winter here, a thought that brings an almost giddy sense of relief. You dream of a place where the sun actually shines and your clothes can get properly dry. On the other hand, it means a new war, a new enemy, a new frontier, and it means leaving the only home you've known for years. The departure is unceremonious. You march to the coast and board the transport ships. There are no cheering crowds, no grand farewells. You just get on a boat. As the ship pulls away from the shore, you watch the gray cliffs of Britain recede. You think of the men you left behind, buried in unmarked graves in the cold, wet earth of Caledonia. They didn't die in a single glorious battle. They died of disease, in skirmishes, from infected wounds. Their end was quiet, miserable, and anonymous. It hits you then that the Legion isn't just a number or a name. It's a collective of men like you, and its strength ebbs and flows. Right now, your strength is ebbing. The 9th Legion isn't disappearing from Britain. It is being quietly removed from the board, a piece moved in a much larger game. You were never erased. You were just edited out. Your new home is on the Rhine. You are stationed near a place called Novi Yamagus in the province of Germania Inferior. And it's here that the archaeologists of the future will find the most definitive proof that your story didn't end in Scotland. Your legion, being a Roman legion, immediately starts doing what Roman legions do best when not actively fighting, building things. You build fortifications, workshops, and barracks. And in the legionary kilns, you fire thousands upon thousands of bricks and roof tiles. It's mindless, repetitive work. but it's essential. Every tile, to ensure it passes inspection and isn't pilfered, is stamped with the Legion's official mark, Lei X Hisp. You, Gaius, probably spend weeks on this task, stamping wet clay with a wooden mold over and over again. You have no idea that these mundane, mass-produced bits of ceramic will become historical dynamite nearly 2,000 years later. For you, it's just another job. For a future archaeologist, it's an indelible record. A time-stamped receipt that says, the 9th Legion was here. These tiles, found in and around modern-day Nijmegen, prove your unit was active on the Rhine frontier around 121 AD, years after your supposed annihilation. You also leave other traces. A silver-plated bronze pendant, part of a horse's harness, is found, inscribed with the name of your legion. Tombstones of your officers are erected, their careers recorded for posterity, showing service with the 9th after the British campaign. Life on the Rhine is different. The enemy is different. The Germanic tribes are a more direct, conventional threat. The fighting, when it comes, is more in line with your training. Shield walls, disciplined advances, cavalry charges. It's a far cry from the ghost war in the Caledonian mists. But the fundamental reality of your life remains the same. The routine, the drill, the boredom, the ever-present risk of a violent death on a forgotten frontier. The years tick by. You are now a veteran, your face lined from the sun and worry, your body carrying the scars of minor wounds and the ache of countless miles marched. You've seen a lot of young recruits come and go. You've outlasted centurions. You are part of the Legion's institutional memory. The historical record of your Legion, the 9th, gets murky after this. It seems to have stayed on the Rhine for a time, but then the trail goes cold again. There are no definitive records of its final destruction. There is, however, another major conflict that erupts in the empire. A decade or so after you left Britain, in the province of Judea, a massive rebellion breaks out, the Bar Kokhba Revolt, starting around 132 AD. It is a brutal, bloody war, one of the most difficult the Romans ever fought. The historian Cassius Dio writes that the Romans suffered heavy losses, even mentioning that an entire legion was wiped out. He doesn't, however, name which one. It's here that many modern historians believe the 9th finally met its end. It's entirely plausible that your legion, a seasoned and available unit, was transferred from the Rhine to the Middle East to help crush the rebellion. You would have been an old man by then, perhaps nearing the end of your service. Or maybe you were already retired, sitting on your small farm somewhere in Gaul, complaining about your aching back and telling improbable stories to your grandchildren. But for the younger men who had taken your place in the ranks, the story would have continued. Imagine it. You or your replacement march again. This time not into the cold mists of the north, but into the searing heat and dust of Judea. The enemy is different again. Not ghosts in the fog, not warriors in the forests, but fiercely determined rebels fighting for their homeland from a network of caves and fortified hilltops. It's another grueling, thankless war of attrition. And somewhere, in some desperate battle over a nameless Judean hill, the 9th Legion, already under strength and worn down from decades of frontier service, is finally broken. Surrounded, cut off, overwhelmed, the eagle is lost. The survivors are too few to reform the unit. The number X is struck from the Roman army's list of active legions, its name and honor extinguished. This is the most likely end. Not a single dramatic event in Scotland, but a slow decline over 2 decades, culminating in a final, unrecorded defeat a continent away. The 9th Legion didn't vanish. It bled out slowly across the frontiers of the empire, first in Britain, then on the Rhine, and finally, perhaps in Judea. It's a much less romantic story. It's a story of bureaucratic transfers, logistical realities, and the slow, grinding machinery of empire. It's a story about a tool being used until it breaks, and then being discarded. And what of you, Gaius? What of the individual soldier? You are the human element lost in these grand historical theories. Maybe you survived it all. Maybe you completed your 25 years. You receive your diploma, a bronze tablet proving your honorable discharge and granting you Roman citizenship. You find a small plot of land, just as you dreamed. You marry a local woman. You have children. You live out your days in peace, a quiet, anonymous life. Your story, the true story of your legion, is never written down. It is simply lived. It fades from memory, replaced by a more exciting, more dramatic myth. The myth of the vanished legion is powerful because it's simple. It provides a neat, tidy ending. But archaeology rarely deals in neatness. It deals in fragments. A stamped roof tile from the Netherlands. An inscription on an altar in York. A piece of a tombstone from a forgotten cemetery. These are the quiet, stubborn facts that get in the way of a good story. They force us to look past the myths and see the more complex, more human reality. The reality of your life. A life of service, of boredom, of terror, of comradeship. A life spent on the edge of the world, not for glory, but for the promise of a peaceful old age. The reason the Ninth Legion disappeared from history is precisely because its story was so common. Legions were moved, merged, and disbanded all the time. The Roman military was a fluid, adaptable machine. Units were destroyed in battle, and their numbers were sometimes retired out of shame, but more often, they just faded away through attrition and administrative change. Your legion wasn't special in its end, only in the myth that grew up to explain its absence from the record in Britain. You didn't vanish into the mists. You simply marched on to another frontier, another job, and eventually into the quiet oblivion that claims almost all of human history. The truth wasn't a single shout of defiance in a Scottish glen, but a long, slow exhalation of a legion that had simply run out of breath. And as you lie in your bed tonight, drifting off to sleep, think of Gaius. Think of the real man behind the legend. A man more concerned with his leaky roof and his worn-out sandals than with his place in history. A man who, like so many, served a vast, impersonal power, doing his duty on the forgotten edges of the world. His legion was not lost. Its story was simply misplaced, waiting for a few stamped pieces of clay to put the narrative back on its true course. He didn't vanish. He just got on with the job. As our journey through the quiet fading of the Ninth Legion concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry, woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Our next story is the 4,000-year-old mistake that rewrote Egyptian history. Hope you like it. There's a certain kind of story we love to tell ourselves about the ancient world, especially ancient Egypt. It's the story of impossible perfection, of mysterious, forgotten technologies, and of achievements so grand they defy rational explanation. We look at the pyramids, at the towering statues of Karnak, and we whisper about alien intervention or lost arts of levitation. We imagine a past where every stone was cut with laser precision, every plan executed flawlessly, and every great monument rose from the desert as if by magic. It's a comforting thought, in a way. It absolves us of having to comprehend the sheer, grinding, terrifyingly human effort that was actually required. It turns the Egyptians into wizards, not people. This whole idea, this romantic notion of a perfect, mystical past, is a complete and utter fantasy. A bedtime story we tell ourselves, because the truth is somehow both more mundane and infinitely more impressive. The ancient Egyptians weren't magicians. They were masters of physics, logistics, and project management who sometimes had very, very bad days at the office. In fact, one of their biggest failures is what tells us the most about their towering successes. It's the ultimate proof that they were brilliant, ambitious, innovative, and human. That whole story of effortless perfection was completely wrong. Tonight, you are not a pharaoh in a gilded palace, nor a priest chanting in a shadowy temple. Your hands are not soft from counting gold or holding sacred texts. Your hands are calloused, cracked, and permanently dusted with the fine pink powder of granite. The year is roughly 1470 BC, and you are here under the unforgiving sun of Aswan in the southern frontier of Egypt. You are a master quarryman, an architect of the earth, and you are in the middle of the most ambitious project of your life, a project that will either make your name immortal or become the most colossal, most expensive, and most humiliating mistake in the history of the kingdom. You are in charge of wrestling a god from the earth, a single piece of stone destined to be the largest obelisk the world has ever seen. And things are not going according to plan. The proof of your struggle, your ambition, and your ultimate failure lies here, still, nearly 3,500 years later. It's an artifact so enormous it couldn't be moved, so explicit it left archaeologists with a perfect blueprint of ancient engineering. It's known today as the unfinished obelisk, a monster of pink granite, 1,200 tons of it, lying prone in its original quarry bed like a beached whale. It's not a monument to a pharaoh's glory. It's a 4,000-year-old receipt for a catastrophic project failure. It's the ancient equivalent of a half-finished skyscraper, abandoned with the cranes still hanging, a silent testament to the moment when human ambition finally collided with the stubborn, unforgiving laws of geology. This single flawed stone tells us more about how the Egyptians built their world than a dozen perfect temples ever could. This discovery, made in the ancient granite quarries of Aswan, reveals something extraordinary about the realities of monumental construction in the New Kingdom. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in ancient Egypt. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about perfection, failure, and the true genius of the ancient world. Your day begins not with the sun, but with the subtle shift in the air that promises its arrival. The cool, almost chilly desert night is starting to lose its grip, and a pale gray light seeps over the eastern cliffs. You don't need a rooster or a water clock. Your body knows the rhythm. For 30 years, this rhythm has been your life. The quarry, the stone, the sun. You roll off your sleeping mat, the coarse reed fibers leaving a temporary pattern on your cheek. Your dwelling is a simple mud brick hut, one of hundreds clustered in the workers' village, nestled near the quarry. It's functional, offering shade from the day's heat and a barrier against the night's predators, both the four-legged and two-legged kind. The air inside is thick with the smell of stale beer, sleeping bodies, and the faint, ever-present scent of granite dust, which seems to work its way into everything: your food, your water, your very lungs. You are Sanusit, and that name carries weight here. You are not a laborer, one of the thousands of men who provide the brute force. You are a Riket, a knower of things, a master craftsman. You understand the soul of the stone. You can read its grain, anticipate its weaknesses, and feel, in your bones, where the fault lines lie hidden beneath the shimmering, crystalline surface. Your father was a quarryman, and his father before him. You learned the language of granite as a boy, not in a scribe's school reading a papyrus, but here, in this vast, open-air workshop of the gods, with a heavy dolerite stone in your hands. You pull on a simple linen kilt, the standard uniform for every man here, from the lowest water carrier to yourself. There's a practicality to it that goes beyond tradition. In the heat that is to come, anything more would be a torment. You chew on a piece of dried fig to wake your senses and take a long drink of water from the clay jar in the corner. It's already lukewarm, tasting of silt and clay. Fresh, cool water is a luxury that will be carefully rationed throughout the day. You step outside your hut, and the scale of the operation immediately asserts itself. The village is already stirring. The smell of baking bread from the communal ovens hangs in the air, a comforting, yeasty aroma that briefly masks the underlying mineral sharpness of the quarry. Men are moving in organized lines, their bare feet silent on the dusty ground. They are collecting their rations for the day, 3 loaves of coarse emmer wheat bread and 2 large jugs of beer. This isn't the beer you might imagine. It's not a recreational beverage for a lazy afternoon. It's a thick, nutritious, slightly sour porridge-like drink, the caloric engine that will power this entire enterprise. It's food, water, and payment all in one. You watch the men, their bodies lean and sinewed, their skin baked to the color of dark clay by the sun. They are not slaves, despite what later storytellers will claim. They are skilled workers, conscripted for a season of labor as a form of taxation, a duty to the state and its divine ruler. They are farmers whose fields are currently flooded by the Nile's annual inundation, stonemasons from distant towns, and soldiers assigned to guard duty. They are organized into gangs or sao, each with its own foreman and its own proud, competitive spirit. They are here to do a job for their living god, the pharaoh. And this time, the job is bigger than any that has come before. The pharaoh is Hatshepsut, not a king, but a woman ruling as one, with all the divine authority and iconography of a male ruler. And like all pharaohs, perhaps even more so because of her unique position, she is building. Building to honor the gods, to project power, and to etch her legacy into the very fabric of Egypt. She has commissioned not one, but 2 colossal obelisks for the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak in Thebes. They are to be the tallest ever erected, single shafts of perfect, unblemished pink granite, stretching nearly 100 feet towards the heavens. One is already on its barge, beginning the slow journey down the Nile. The other is your responsibility. It is your masterpiece and your nightmare. You walk towards the quarry, your sandals crunching on the gravel path. The site is a landscape of human ambition carved into the bedrock. For centuries, this place, Aswan, has been the source of the empire's finest granite. The ground is scarred and pockmarked, a chaotic terrain of pits, trenches, and discarded stone. All around you are the ghosts of past projects, the rectangular depressions where obelisks were born, the half-finished blocks that were abandoned due to a flaw. It's a library of trial and error, a testament to generations of knowers of things like yourself. But your project dominates the landscape. In the heart of the quarry lies a vast rectangular trench, deep enough to swallow a house. And in the center of that trench, still fused to the earth at its base, is the obelisk. Even in its unfinished horizontal state, it is breathtaking. It seems to go on forever, a single monolithic spine of stone, wider than 3 men lying end to end. The morning sun catches the quartz crystals embedded in the rock, making it glitter and sparkle as if it were alive. It is beautiful, powerful, and utterly terrifying. You've been working on this single piece of rock for over a year of sweat, of dust, of relentless percussive noise. A year of your life and the lives of 5,000 men, all focused on this one object. As you approach the edge of the pit, your foreman, a burly, good-natured man named Back, greets you with a respectful nod. He has the plans, sketched in red ochre on a flake of limestone, not a detailed architectural blueprint, but a simple, elegant outline showing the proportions, the intended slope of the sides, the shape of the pyramidion at the top. The math is sacred, a reflection of cosmic order. Your job is to translate that divine geometry into this stubborn physical reality. Back points to the northern end. The trench is nearly complete on the western side, Master. We can begin the final undercutting within 10 days, if the gods are willing. if the gods are willing, and if the stone is willing. That is the great unknown that hangs over you every single day. You know this stone better than you know your own children. You have walked its length 1,000 times. You have run your hands over every inch of its surface, feeling for the subtle vibrations, the almost imperceptible changes in texture that might signal a hidden weakness, an internal fissure that could doom the entire project. So far, it has been perfect, a flawless specimen of Aswan granite. But the most dangerous part is yet to come. The final separation from the bedrock is a moment of immense stress on the stone. It's the moment of birth, and it can be a violent, unpredictable one. The pressure you feel is more than just the weight of the rock. It's the weight of the pharaoh's command, the legacy of your ancestors, and the livelihoods of every man looking to you for guidance. And deep in your gut, you have a feeling, a small, cold knot of unease that the dust and the heat can't seem to touch. This stone is testing you, and you are not entirely sure you are going to win. The greatest challenge isn't just ahead of you. It is, quite literally, beneath you. Your day is a symphony of managed chaos, a constant battle against physics, heat, and human exhaustion. The first order of business is inspection. You walk the perimeter of the great trench, your shadow long in the early morning light. The work from the previous day looks good. The trench walls are sheer and clean, a testament to the relentless, repetitive labor that defines this place. The method is brutally simple and brutally effective. There are no diamond-tipped saws, no dynamite, no advanced, mysterious technology. There is only stone and more stone. The workers use pounders, heavy, round balls of dolerite, a rock that is even harder and denser than the granite they are cutting. Each man holds a pounder, which can weigh up to 12 pounds, and simply pounds, for hours, all day. Thousands of men, shoulder to shoulder along the marked-out lines, rhythmically smashing their dolerite balls against the granite. The sound is the first thing that hits you, a constant rolling thunder that echoes off the quarry walls. It's not the sharp crack of a chisel on marble. It's the dull, deep, percussive crunch of rock pulverizing rock. It's a sound that you don't just hear with your ears. You feel it in your chest, in the soles of your feet. It is the heartbeat of the quarry. This process doesn't cut the granite in the way we think of it. It pulverizes it. Each blow turns a tiny fraction of the granite surface into dust. It's an act of geological erosion, sped up by a factor of 1,000,000 through sheer, organized manpower. You watch a team working on a new section. They move with an practiced, efficient rhythm, their bodies slick with a mixture of sweat and the fine pink dust that fills the air. It's a thick, gritty haze that coats everything, getting in your eyes, your throat, your nose. You've learned to breathe through a piece of damp linen, but even so, at the end of the day, you will cough up a pinkish phlegm. It's the taste of your profession. Your role is to guide this brute force with precision. You are the conductor of this stone-smashing orchestra. You check the lines drawn in red ochre by your most trusted artisans. These lines are your guide, marking the exact dimensions of the obelisk. Any deviation, even by a finger's breadth, could compromise the structural integrity or the sacred geometry. You call out adjustments, using hand signals to be seen and understood over the deafening roar. You are constantly assessing not just the stone, but your men. You see the subtle signs of fatigue, the slight slowing of a swing, the slump in a man's shoulders. You know when to call for a water break, when to rotate a team out for a less strenuous task, like hauling away the baskets of pulverized dust. Dehydration is your constant enemy, a silent predator that can fell the strongest man before he even realizes he's in danger. The Nile may be a lifeline of water just a mile away, but getting that water here, in thousands of clay jars, is a logistical feat in itself. Around mid-morning, the sun begins its assault in earnest. The granite underfoot becomes too hot to touch. The air shimmers with heat, and the glare off the crystalline rock is blinding. The men wrap their heads in linen cloths, but there is no real escape. Your job takes you to the surface of the obelisk itself, the great, flat top that will one day be carved with the pharaoh's titles. Here, the heat is a physical presence. It radiates upwards, cooking you from below, while the sun beats down from above. You walk along a series of red lines that map out the final shape. It's here that the true artistry lies. You are supervising a team of specialists who are using a different technique. They are not just pounding, they are drilling. Using copper tubes and a quartz sand abrasive, they slowly, painstakingly drill a series of interlocking holes. It's a slow, tedious process. A worker will twist the copper tube back and forth, while another trickles in water and sand, creating a slurry that grinds away at the granite. This allows for more precise shaping, especially for the pyramidion, the pyramid-shaped cap that will one day be sheathed in electrum, a shining alloy of gold and silver, to catch the first and last rays of the sun. It seems almost absurd to be shaping this mountain of stone with what amounts to sand and a soft metal tube, but it works. It's a testament to patience. The Egyptians didn't conquer stone with force alone. They conquered it with time, an almost unimaginable amount of time. Lunch is a brief respite. The pounding stops, and the sudden silence is almost as jarring as the noise itself. The only sound is the murmur of voices and the wind whistling over the lip of the quarry. The men retreat to the slivers of shade cast by the quarry walls, eating their bread and drinking their beer. You sit with back, sharing a small meal of salted fish, dates, and bread. You don't talk about work. You talk about home, about the latest news from Thebes, about the outrageous price of good lamp oil. It's a moment of mundane humanity in the midst of a superhuman task. You know these men. You know their families, their hopes, their complaints. They are not just a workforce. They are your community. Your responsibility for their well-being is as heavy as any block of stone. But your mind is never far from the project. Even as you eat, your eyes are on the obelisk. You are thinking about the next phase, the most critical and dangerous of all, freeing the underside. To do this, your men will have to tunnel beneath the 1,000-ton behemoth, chipping away at the final ribs of rock connecting it to the earth. They will be working in cramped, dark, stiflingly hot tunnels, pounding away at the rock above their heads. The risk of a premature crack, of the obelisk settling unexpectedly, is immense. It is a task that requires the utmost skill and the steadiest nerve. You finish your meal and stand up, brushing the crumbs from your kilt. The sun is at its zenith, a white-hot coin in a bleached blue sky. The brief silence is over. The foremen are getting their men back to work. The rolling thunder of the dollarite pounders begins again, slowly at first, then building to its familiar, all-encompassing roar. You take one last look at the magnificent, terrible stone. It lies there impassive, indifferent to the sweat and toil and hopes being poured into it. It has been here for millions of years, a silent part of the earth's crust. Your job is to convince it to become a part of heaven. And as the afternoon wears on, and the heat seems to warp the very air you breathe, that small knot of unease in your gut tightens. You are challenging a force of nature, and nature does not always yield gracefully. The day is far from over, and you know, with a certainty that chills you despite the heat, that the stone is keeping a secret. The question is whether it will reveal that secret before it's too late. Your status as a knower of things affords you a position of respect that bridges the gap between the laborers and the scribes. You are an artisan, not an aristocrat, but in the world of monumental building, your expertise is more valuable than a noble bloodline. When the vizier's agent comes from Thebes to inspect the progress, he speaks to you directly, not through an intermediary. He brings missives from the court, updates on the political climate, and most importantly, the continued blessing of the pharaoh. Hatshepsut's reign is a paradox that you and everyone else live with. She is a woman, But she is king. Official carvings depict her with the traditional false beard and the muscular physique of a male pharaoh. Her rule is prosperous, a time of peace and ambitious trade expeditions to the distant land of Punt. But there is an undercurrent of tension. Her stepson, Thutmose III, is waiting in the wings, a young man growing into a formidable military leader. Hatshepsut's claim to the throne is strong, based on her direct divine lineage, but a female pharaoh is an anomaly. Her massive building projects are not just acts of piety, they are political statements. They are a way of saying, I am a legitimate and powerful ruler, chosen by the gods. Behold my works. This obelisk, destined for the sacred heart of the empire's most important temple, is the cornerstone of that statement. And you are the man responsible for quarrying it. The political pressure is immense. A success will bring you honor, land, and wealth. A failure, well, failure is simply not an option. Your beliefs are woven into the very fabric of your work. This is not just a construction project. It is a sacred duty. Granite, to you, is not mere rock. It is Menk, living stone. It has a spirit. The obelisk itself is a tekken, a petrified ray of the sun, a conduit between the earthly realm of men and the heavenly realm of Ra, the sun god and creator of all. When it is finally raised at Karnak, its electrum-sheathed pyramidion will capture the dawn, symbolizing the moment of creation, the Zep Tepi, or first time. It is a symbol of stability, of permanence, of the eternal cycle of rebirth. To shape this stone is to participate in the cosmic order, to help maintain the divine principle of truth, balance, and justice. This is why you tolerate the dust, the heat, the danger. It is not just a job. It is a calling. When you inspect the stone, you are not just looking for geological flaws. You are sensing the disposition of the stone's spirit. Before the work began, priests from the local temple of Khnum, the ram-headed god of the cataracts and a creator deity, came to purify the site. Offerings were made. Incantations were chanted to soothe the spirit of the mountain, to ask its permission to remove a piece of its essence. You yourself make a small offering each morning at a simple rock shrine near the quarry's edge, a bit of bread, a splash of beer, a personal appeal to the guardians of the stone. You are a practical man, a master of engineering and logistics, but you are also a man of your time. To you, the physical and the metaphysical are two sides of the same coin. A flaw in the rock could be a sign of the god's displeasure just as easily as it could be a simple geological anomaly. The social structure of the quarry is a finely tuned machine. The thousands of men are divided into two main gangs, the left side and the right side, a common division in large state projects. These are further divided into smaller files, or divisions, of around 200 men, each with its own name, like the vigorous or the enduring. This fosters a sense of competition, a rivalry that you, as the master, can use to spur production. You post the daily progress, how many baskets of rubble were removed, how many finger breadths of trench deepened on a limestone ostrakhan for all to see. The foremen of the leading teams are rewarded with extra rations of meat or finer linen. It's a simple but effective form of motivation. Your life, however, is markedly different from that of the men you command. While they sleep in communal barracks, you have a small, private hut. While their diet is a monotonous but effective fuel of bread and beer, you have access to salted fish, dates, onions, and occasionally goat meat. You are paid not just in rations, but in deben of copper and in fine goods brought down from the North pottery, oils, and high-quality textiles. You are part of a skilled middle class, the backbone of the Egyptian state. You can read and write the simpler hieratic script necessary for keeping records, calculating volumes, and managing supplies. You are literate, but not literary. Your language is that of angles, proportions, and logistics. But this status comes with its own burdens. You are the one who has to answer to the scribe from Thebes. You are the one who has to plan the work, not just for the day, but but for the months and years to come. You are the one who must decide when a section of stone is too dangerous, when a man is too sick to work, when to push harder, and when to ease off. You live with the constant, gnawing fear of catastrophic failure. Not just a crack in the stone, but an outbreak of disease in the camp, a collapse in the supply line of food from the north, or a flash flood from a freak desert storm. One evening, as the sun sets and casts long purple shadows across the quarry, you sit with back, looking over the immense stone. The work is done for the day. The men are back in the village, and a relative quiet has descended. Back, ever the optimist, talks of the day the obelisk will be raised in Thebes, of the great festival that will be held. He talks of the glory it will bring to their names. You nod, but your eyes are fixed on a particular spot on the stone surface, a place where the light seems to catch it in a slightly different way. You've noticed it for a few days now. It's probably nothing. A slight variation in the feldspar concentration, an optical illusion created by the setting sun. It is a perfect stone, Seigneur said, Back says, his voice filled with awe. The gods have truly blessed this work. You don't answer immediately. You walk over to the spot, kneeling down to run your hand across the surface. It's smooth, warm from the day's heat. There is no visible crack, no tangible flaw, but still, you feel it. A flicker of doubt. A whisper of warning from the stone itself. Or perhaps just from the part of your mind where 30 years of experience are stored. In this world, where divine will and geological reality are inseparable, you can't be sure which it is. And that uncertainty is a heavier burden than any dollarite pounder. You are nearing the point of no return. Soon, you will commit to freeing the beast entirely, and you can only pray that you have not misread the omens or the stone. The days turn into weeks, the weeks into months. The relentless pounding continues. The trench around the obelisk is now complete, a massive man-made canyon isolating the great spine of rock from its mountain parent. The dust, the noise, the heat, they have become the very texture of your existence. The focus of the work now shifts to the most delicate and dangerous phase, the undercutting. The men must now work in the trench, chipping away at the rock beneath the obelisk's belly. To do this, they dig a series of small tunnels, just large enough for 1 or 2 men to crawl into. They lie on their backs in the suffocating darkness, with thousands of tons of granite suspended just inches above their faces. Their tools are the same, dollarite pounders. But here, the work is different. They cannot get a full swing. It is a cramped, claustrophobic process of chipping, grinding, and scraping. The dust is thicker, the air more stagnant. The only light comes from the flickering flames of small pottery lamps, which consume the precious oxygen and fill the tunnels with oily smoke. You are constantly overseeing this phase. You cannot afford a single mistake. The obelisk is not being cut free all at once. It is being left attached to the bedrock by a series of large, regularly spaced webs or ribs of granite. These are the last tethers holding it in place. The plan is to weaken these webs systematically until the obelisk is ready to be snapped free. Your calculations, based on generations of knowledge, tell you how thick these webs need to be to support the weight and how much they can be reduced before the structure becomes unstable. It's a terrifying balancing act. One afternoon, a crisis. A runner comes to you, his face pale beneath his coating of dust. Master, a tunnel collapsed on the western face. Your heart lurches. You race to the site. A section of the trench wall, not the obelisk itself, has given way, burying the entrance to one of the undercutting tunnels. 2 men are inside. Panic begins to ripple through the nearby workers. Your voice cuts through it, sharp and authoritative. You organize a rescue team immediately, calling for the strongest men to clear the rubble by hand. You direct them, your mind racing, calculating the risk of a further collapse. For an hour, which feels like an eternity, they dig. Finally, they break through. The 2 men are pulled out, shaken and bruised, but miraculously alive. The incident sends a shockwave of fear through the camp. Work stops. The men are spooked. They see it as a bad omen, a warning from the spirit of the stone. That evening, you authorize a double ration of beer and call for the priests. A ceremony is held to appease the gods and purify the quarry. It's a necessary act of leadership, a way to manage the morale of your workforce. You must project an aura of calm, unshakable confidence, even if your own stomach is churning with anxiety. Was it just a geological weakness in the trench wall? Or was it something more? The line between science and superstition is, as always, blurry. The work resumes, but the atmosphere is different. There is a new tension in the air. The men are more cautious, their movements less certain. You find yourself second-guessing your own calculations. Are the support webs thick enough? Are you pushing the men too hard? The pressure from Thebes is mounting. A courier arrived just last week with a papyrus bearing the seal of Hatshepsut's chief steward. The message was polite but firm. The temple awaits its second sentinel. A festival for its dedication is already being planned. Delays will not be looked upon favorably. You focus your attention on the stone itself, trying to shut out the external pressures. You spend hours on its surface, walking its length again and again. You are looking for the enemy. A crack. Granite is immensely strong under compression, but it's brittle. It has very little tolerance for bending or torsion. A sudden temperature change, an unseen internal flaw, or a mistake during the quarrying process can create a fissure. And once a fissure starts, it is almost impossible to stop. You and your most trusted artisans examine every inch of the surface. You splash water on it, which can make fine cracks more visible as the water seeps in and darkens the line. You listen to it, tapping it with a small stone hammer, listening for a change in the resonance that might indicate a hollow or a flaw beneath the surface. It is a meticulous, nerve-wracking process. For now, the stone remains silent, its surface pristine, but the process is nearing its climax. The undercutting is almost complete. The support webs have been chipped down to their final, calculated thickness. The moment of truth is approaching. The plan is to use massive wooden levers and sheer manpower to rock the obelisk, snapping the final webs and freeing it from the bedrock. Then comes the equally Herculean task of maneuvering it out of the quarry pit and onto a sled for its journey to the Nile. But first, it must be born. You decide to give the men a day of rest before the final stage. The tension is too high. A tired worker is a careless worker, and you can afford no carelessness now. You stand alone on the edge of the quarry as twilight falls, looking at your life's work. It is magnificent. A perfect geometric form imposed upon the chaos of nature. A monument to human will. Everything depends on the next few days. Every decision you have made, every calculation, every prayer has led to this moment. You place your hand on the stone, its surface now cool to the touch. You try to feel its spirit, to ask for its cooperation. But the only thing you feel is the immense, indifferent weight of the rock, and the even greater weight of your own responsibility. The silence of the quarry feels different tonight. It doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like the held breath before a storm. The day arrives. The air is still and heavy, the sky a flawless, empty blue. There is a nervous energy rippling through the thousands of men gathered around the quarry pit. The priests have made their offerings. The foremen have given their final instructions. You have triple-checked every calculation. The support webs beneath the obelisk have been reduced to their absolute minimum. The great stone is balanced on a knife's edge. Your plan is not to use brute force, but controlled, coordinated effort. Large wooden posts have been set up along the trench as fulcrums for massive timber levers. Hundreds of men stand ready at these levers, their hands gripping the rough wood. Other teams stand by with thick, plaited ropes, ready to help guide the movement. Your job is to stand on the surface of the obelisk itself, a position of great honor and even greater danger. From there, you will give the signals. You will be the first to feel the stone move, to sense its response. You climb onto the great stone, your heart pounding a rhythm that matches the nervous beat of the ceremonial drums. From your vantage point, you can see the entire operation laid out below you. The faces of the men are turned upwards, watching you, waiting for your command. For a moment, the sheer audacity of what you are attempting strikes you with full force. You are about to move a mountain. You take a deep, steadying breath, filling your lungs with the familiar dusty air. You raise your hand. The drums fall silent. The only sound is the wind. You give the first signal, a sharp downward chop of your arm. The foremen shout the order. With a great unified grunt, the men on the levers throw their weight onto the timbers. The wood creaks and groans under the immense strain. You feel a deep, shuddering vibration beneath your feet. A low groan echoes from the depths of the rock. It is the sound of the first support web beginning to fracture. A cheer goes up from the men, but you silence it with a raised hand. This is the most delicate moment. You need to listen, to feel. You signal for another coordinated push, this time from the opposite side, rocking the great stone in its cradle. Again, the levers groan. Again, you feel the shudder as the stone shifts, a fraction of an inch. A deep, grinding sound comes from below as another web gives way. It is working. Your calculations were correct. The stone is yielding. A surge of relief and triumph washes over you. You allow yourself a small, tight smile. You will be celebrated. Your name, Senusrit, will be carved in the annals of the pharaoh's court. You signal for the third push. The one you calculate will be enough to snap the final connections. The men heave, their muscles straining. The wooden levers bend, seemingly to their breaking point. And then you hear it. It is not the deep, satisfying groan of fracturing rock you were expecting. It is a different sound. A sharp, high-pitched crack. It is sickeningly clear, like a piece of pottery splitting in a kiln. It cuts through the air, and for a heart-stopping second, a dead silence falls over the quarry. Every man freezes. And then you see it, spreading across the surface of the stone, not a foot from where you stand. A dark, hair-thin line appears. It seems to move in slow motion, a tiny, insignificant-looking fissure that snakes its way across the perfect, polished granite. But you know what it means. It is a death sentence. The crack is not just on the surface. You know, with a certainty that makes you feel cold despite the blistering sun, that it runs deep into the heart of the stone. All the stress, all the tension of the final separation has been released at a single weak point, a point you never saw. An internal flaw, a geological secret the stone had kept hidden until this very moment. A collective gasp rises from the men below. They have seen it too. The dark line on the pink granite is unmistakable. No one moves, no one speaks. They all look to you, their master, their knower of things, waiting for you to do something, to fix it, to reverse what has just happened. But you can do nothing. You stare at the fissure, this simple line that has just invalidated more than a year of labor, shattered the ambitions of a pharaoh, and quite possibly ended your career. The obelisk, your masterpiece, is broken. It will never stand at Karnak. It will never greet the rising sun. It will lie here in its dusty cradle, a colossal monument to a single, catastrophic moment of failure. The silence stretches on, broken only by the whistling of the desert wind. In that moment, the weight you feel is not of the stone, but of the profound, crushing finality of your mistake. The aftermath is a slow, quiet unraveling. There is no shouting, no panic. There is only a stunned, heavy silence. The men slowly back away from the levers, their faces a mixture of disbelief and fear. You remain on the surface of the failed obelisk, your legs feeling weak beneath you. You walk over to the crack, tracing its path with your finger. It's not wide, but it's deep. You can feel the sharp edge of the fracture. It's definitive. Back climbs up to join you, his face ashen. He says nothing, just looks at the crack and then at you. The unspoken question hangs in the air. Can it be salvaged? Your mind, numb with shock, begins to work through the possibilities. Could you shorten the obelisk? Cut away the broken section and reshape it? You do the calculations in your head. The crack is too far down the shaft. To remove it, you would have to sacrifice nearly a third of its length. The proportions would be wrong. It would be a stunted, ugly thing, an insult to the sacred geometry. More importantly, it would be an admission of failure. Hatshepsut did not commission a stunted obelisk. She commissioned the largest in the world. There is also the possibility of trying to repair it, to fill the crack with mortar, but you dismiss the thought as soon as it enters your mind. It would be structurally unsound, and the scar would be visible forever. An obelisk must be monolithic, a single perfect stone, a tekken. A broken and repaired obelisk is no tekken at all. It is just a rock. The decision is clear, and it is brutal. The project is over. The obelisk must be abandoned. These 1,200 tons of perfectly shaped granite, the product of tens of thousands of man-hours, are now nothing more than a testament to failure. You give the order. The words feel like stones in your mouth. It is over. Abandon the work. The news travels through the camp like a plague. For the workers, the initial shock gives way to a strange mix of disappointment and relief. Their great work has come to nothing, but also their backbreaking labor is finished. They will be reassigned, sent home to their villages, or moved to other projects. But for you, it is different. This was your project, your responsibility. The agent from the vizier's court must be informed. You spend the evening composing the message, not on a piece of cheap ostrakhan, but on a sheet of good papyrus. You choose your words carefully, describing the event in stark, technical terms. You speak of an unforeseen internal flaw in the stone, a weakness that could not have been detected. You frame it as a geological inevitability, an act of the gods, rather than a failure of engineering. Whether they will believe you is another matter entirely. In the days that follow, the quarry is dismantled. The tools are collected. The workers' village is slowly emptied. The logistics of the great operation are unwound. The obelisk is left where it lies, a silent rebuke in its massive trench. The red ochre lines you so carefully drew are still visible on its surface, a ghostly blueprint of what was meant to be. The dolerite pounders lie scattered around the pit, as if dropped in a moment of sudden flight. Archaeologists, centuries and centuries later, would find it just like this. They would see your ochre lines and understand your intent, a plan frozen in time. They would find the pounders and comprehend the sheer brute force of your methods. They would analyze the trench and the tunnels and reconstruct your quarrying process with a clarity that no finished monument could ever provide. And most importantly, they would study the crack. They would see not one, but 3 separate fissures, evidence that after the first catastrophic failure, your workers, perhaps under your direction, made a desperate, last-ditch attempt to salvage the project by resizing it, only to have the stone crack again. The stone was simply rotten with internal flaws. This abandoned failure would become one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt. While a finished obelisk at Karnak tells a story of glory and perfection, this broken one tells a far more valuable story, the truth. It reveals the methods, the tools, the incredible risks, and the human fallibility behind the awe-inspiring monuments of the ancient world. It proves that the Egyptians were not magicians or aliens. They were brilliant, resourceful, and persistent human beings who sometimes failed. The unfinished obelisk is not a monument to a pharaoh. It is a monument to you, Senusrit, and to the thousands of men who worked alongside you. It is the story of your ambition, your expertise, and your worst day at work, preserved in granite for all time. Your own fate is uncertain. Perhaps your report is accepted, and your past successes are enough to save your reputation. Perhaps you are disgraced, demoted, and sent to manage a minor quarry in the western desert. The historical record is silent on the fate of the master quarrymen of the unfinished obelisk. But your legacy is there, lying under the Aswan sun. You set out to create a perfect symbol of eternity, and instead, you left behind something far more powerful. An honest and enduring story of human struggle. A reminder that sometimes our greatest teachers are not our successes, but our magnificent, colossal failures. As our journey through the story of the unfinished obelisk concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Good night.